Hello there, and welcome. Okay, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras, and this is Dr. G's ADHD Chat, the show that tries to help make the world safe for ADHD, and of course ADHDers. Okay, we are in a different location, place where I usually film is have been co-opted, have tons of people around, and so this is my only quiet spot that I can kind of get this done and give you a little bit of value, hopefully. I have some news. I have been talking about this for a long time, but just recently there was a kind of an exciting new study done by Mass General. If you're a New Englander, you're probably familiar with Mass General, but basically they are affiliated with Harvard University, and they do some top drawer research. They recently released a study on the benefits of early treatment for ADHDers. And I just noticed I don't have my mic plugged in. Maybe it won't. Anyway, they just recently published this study, and it should hopefully calm down a lot of people who are really worried about the treatments for ADHD and the side effects, and will this make my son or daughter a drug addict, or some other stuff. I mean, when you look at the history of ADHD, which has been treated with stimulant medications since 1937, which most of us would agree is a good long while and a pretty good treatment. Proof of treatment, but some people, stay worried and stay concerned. This research proves or comes to the conclusion that ADHDers who are treated early and consistently have fewer of the problems that sometimes happen. Well, let's be blunt about it, that ADHDers have more problems with throughout life. And we're basically talking about substance abuse of different kinds, drugs, alcohol, you name it, problems with relationships, problems with maintaining jobs, just problems with emotional adjustment in general. And the research proves, or suggests at least, that folks who are treated early have fewer problems with this sort of thing. Which, when you think about it, makes some sense. What's his life like for an ADHDer who is not treated? Is he understood by a warm, compassionate group of, teachers, coaches, or is he ostracized and isolated because he interrupts, because he's disruptive? I'm saying he a lot. Could be she as easily. Although girls tend to cause less trouble than boys with ADHD. But the idea is you're going to have these people, these kids, who are not treated because their parents are afraid to treat them, afraid to put them on medication, afraid to follow the doctor's recommendations. They don't do so well. Because, basically without something to help improve, their behavior, if you will, what happens? They act out. They interrupt. They disrupt classes. They don't pay attention for sure. Even if they're, on the more quiet side of ADHD, and, the inattentive type, and all they do is just kind of sit there and daydream, they're not paying attention, and they're not going to do well in school, and they're not going to like school, they're going to hate it, and depending, they may drop out of school early. They may just repeatedly flunk courses, get an A in the ones they like, get an F in the ones they don't like. If you are the parent of an ADHD child, you are familiar with how it goes. I didn't mention this at the start of this particular session, but I usually do. I'm a clinical psychologist and neuropsychologist, and I'm also the parent of a child with, well, he's an adult now, with ADHD. I have lived through the sort of growth of ADHD as a concept, because I will tell you, when I was in grad school, I never got any information about ADHD. Never. Nothing. Zip. And I wasn't alone. I remember in my residency class, we just didn't have any information about it. It wasn't as well known. It wasn't as well researched. And fortunately, the treatment was at least generally known what should be done. I don't think we had quite the finesse then that we do now, and how to handle it, what to do with your child. Was there what could the school do? You ever heard of a 504 plan? You ever heard of accommodations? No, definitely not. Would anybody suggest that to you? Apparently not. Nobody ever suggested it to me. So, we were flying blind, basically. We were trying to, do the things that would make life easier for our child, but we didn't have any help. Well, fortunately now, there's help everywhere. And we know more. And that's the good news. We know more. And we know that if you have ADHD, you are eligible for accommodations under Section 504 of the Americans with Disabilities Act. You get testing, and you can get testing in a distraction-free environment. You can get extended time for testing. You can get preferential seating. You can get advanced copies of the lecture notes if you're at that level. You can get pretty much anything that doesn't cost the school system money, although you are eligible to get an extra set of textbooks if forgetting them is one of the major issues. You also can get a teacher appointed to check your book bag before you leave school to make sure you've got what you need to do the homework that night. Well, all kinds of things, and pretty much it's only your ingenuity that limits the possibilities. And frankly, schools are usually a lot happier to do 504 plans than they are IEPs. IEPs are individual education plans. That's what you get if you've got dyslexia or some other kind of learning disability. The good thing about schools like 504 plans better than they like IEPs, because IEPs by definition cost them money. They're paying a special ed teacher or several special ed teachers to work, and they have to work with smaller groups than a regular classroom teacher. So that costs them money. And school superintendents are very bottom line oriented. 504 accommodations, they don't cost anything. It doesn't, you want to have a kid go to the library to take a test or go sit in the vice principal's office and take a test, it doesn't cost you a dime as far as being a school superintendent is concerned. So basically they like it better, and they are way more accommodating when you're asking for accommodations than they are if you're asking for remedial treatment. Okay, so that's one of the things that makes, as your child continues throughout his or her academic career, and maybe eventually goes to college or goes to a trade school, whatever the plan is, that is easier if they are in treatment. Easier. And sometimes, without treatment, Lord knows if it's even possible. Okay? And the fear of the medications and the fear of unintended consequences, it just really, honestly, doesn't happen. Okay? Any stimulant medication with any ADHD person typically will be effective, will work. It's not that complicated, and it's pretty easy to understand. Once you get the notion that ADHD is a neurologic condition, and that one of the things you need to do is to stimulate the brain so that the frontal lobes are doing what they're supposed to do in terms of paying attention, making plans, executive functioning, all that good stuff. Okay, so that's what you want for your ADHD kid, and you can get it if you are open about putting him or her into treatment. And treatment is normally a combination of medication and psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is important. Medication makes it possible for them to stay focused a bit longer and have better emotional control. But the old saying, pills don't teach skills, well, Lord knows that applies, especially to ADHDers. So you need somebody as a therapist who's familiar with ADHD, obviously. That seems like it should be without saying, but I guess not. And you need to have somebody who's worked with a bunch of ADHD kiddos and can get them to understand that they can succeed, that they are not crippled and have no chance of making any advances in life. And that's sometimes a tricky thing. If you're a parent of an ADHD child, you know that it sometimes is hard to convince them that they're going to be able to do well in life, and that they can adapt and adjust to school so it doesn't feel so horrible to them. It's possible, okay? It's so much easier if you have treatment. And there are no particular health side costs for being in treatment for ADHD. I mean, I do a lot of work with adults with ADHD. I do coaching with adults with ADHD. They don't typically have negative side effects. Oh, hey, Beverly. Good to see you again. Anyway, but you've got to give the system a chance to work for you, because it does work for you. And any resistance to that is just probably going to get you exactly what you don't want in terms of an angry, upset teenager, surly, not pleasant to be around, and it can take years to get over that. Treatment shortcuts all that. You don't have to go through all that. You don't have to have difficulties with the ADHD, behaviors. The lack of control, the lack of ability to sustain attention, the lack of ability to control impulses, all of that stuff is much better managed if you are in a treatment protocol. Obviously, the quality of different treatment protocols depends. You need folks who know what they're doing and have been doing it for a while, and you need to trust them. Of course, they've got to earn your trust too, but you should reasonably rapidly get a notion that whether your psychiatrist, psychotherapist combination knows what they're talking about, or if they're doing it off of some unknown checklist that doesn't really work very well. But you ought to be able to tell. For most kids, you put them on a stimulant particularly, and you are amazed at how quickly things improve. There are some the alpha agonist group of medications takes 2 or 3 weeks before you can tell if it's going to work. And frankly, most of us have a lot less experience with those, but they are also part of the treatment protocol that should be considered. Okay, I think I've gone on and on and on about that. Again, treatment works. Take advantage of it. Let other people help you, and don't be afraid of all sorts of imaginary kind of problems that typically do not happen. Okay? So, I'm Dr. Terry James Gingras. This has been Dr. G's ADHD Chat, and we're the show that tries to make the world safe for ADHD. And remember, people who only think inside the box don't change anything. It's the outside the box thinkers who make changes in the world to improve things. And who knows, your young lady or young man may be the person that solves some of the world's biggest problems. Hold that thought. Okay, we'll catch you next time.